You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
Hey, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast, of course, brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports wagering partner of CLNS Sports. Go to FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up today. And today, it's your boy Pat Lane, as always, with my guy Matt St. Jean. And today we are joined by an incredibly special guest, beat writer for WEI, a co-host of the Six Rings podcast, and newly engaged Mike Kadlick to talk about the Patriots moving on. We have a new engagement and a new separation of Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. Of course, is out as the head coach after 24 seasons. It's kind of crazy. But welcome in, Mike. We love having you on, sir. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. What a day to do it. We planned this earlier in the week. We didn't know what was going to happen, and so glad to do it on one of the more monumental days in Boston sports history. So thanks for having me, guys.
Yep. It's one of those, it's definitely one of those days where it's like, where were you when you found out that, Belichick got fired or whatever.
Let's do it. Was everybody awake for it? Was everybody awake for it? Or did somebody roll over and see a Twitter notification? How did this go down for you guys?
I was on Twitter when it was announced, but I was looking at them announcing the London games. So I had just copied the link to the tweet about the London opponents being announced. And I was about to send it to people because there's two teams and they're hosting games. The Patriots play on the road next year, which is something we're not going to unpack until a later date. But I went to send that to somebody, and then I opened Slack and saw that somebody had just sent the Bill Belichick tweet. And I was like, oh, and then I went back to Twitter, and it was the next one down, and I had missed it.
Yeah, so I have to be at work for 7:15, and so I was obviously on the road. And the funny thing is that I never have my phone in my hand during my commute. I always listen to a podcast or music or whatever, and my phone's always off the other way, right? And so, but this morning, my wife thought we're trying to get tickets to a concert for my son for the summer. She thought that there was a giveaway on Kiss 108, so I was listening to Kiss 108, which is just not recommended for morning listening. But nevertheless, I have my phone in my hand because I had to call them or whatever, and all of a sudden I get a notification on my phone. I'm like, what the hell, dude? I'm like, oh my god, they fired us. So I was wide awake, driving to school, and I was like, holy crap. I'm like, now what? And then I'm like, who do I call? There's no one I can call.
It's crazy. It was nuts. So I've been hunkered down the last 3 or 4 days. Not really hunkered down, but sitting at the computer, doing reading the news and kind of writing some stuff every time something leaks and just kind of keeping everything up to date. And so me and my fiance woke up this morning to go for a run because we're training for a marathon. And so we're on a regimented schedule. It was up and early. She's an accountant, so she's in her busy season. It's starting this week. And so we got up early, and I was like, all right, this is perfect. You get up, you get the run done. We were scheduled for a 5-mile run today. And so we get up, we leave the house at 7. I was like, all right, we'll get this over with. I'll go back, shower, and then we'll wait and see what happens. And literally, quarter mile into the run, I get a buzz on my watch, and it's Adam Schefter. And I'm like, and I was like, I gotta go. And she's like, what? I was like, Bill's gone. And so I just turned the other way and ran back to our apartment. And
That's incredible.
How far into the run were you?
I have to do my 5 miles tomorrow because I did a quarter of a mile and I was done. So it was tough.
That's incredible.
So I can't take a rest day on a Friday now because I had to run back for Bill. But
I'm
nonetheless, now we're here.
If you had done a mile of your run too, and you had to run back a mile, that would just be.
I know.
Brutal.
I was lucky that it was halfway. It was halfway. So we have to do a longer run this weekend, and I was like, I'm gonna get halfway through that. I'm gonna be halfway across the freaking wherever, and then they're gonna announce Mayo, and I'm gonna have to run all the way back.
Oh my god. Yeah. Oh goodness. Yeah. That's just luck of the draw, right? In that situation. So. Yeah, it was crazy. And then I'm driving, right? So I can't tweet or send anything out or whatever. Right. So I'm like, now what? So, but hey, it was, it's a crazy time. I do think and I think, Mike, you're on board with this, and I think you've said this before too. Like, I think the timing was right. I think it was the right timing for everyone involved. It did. I really did like seeing them at the podium together today. I thought that it seemed very genuine to me. It seemed like they actually respected each other, that it was really coming from a place where they, really kind of came to the decision together. And it wasn't, Belichick's getting fired as Matt Felger Matt said this afternoon, or, Robert Kraft is too cheap to whatever, that wasn't the case. I don't think. I think Bill looked at the roster and said, I want to get my next 14 wins. And I don't know if that's going to happen in the next 2 years with the Patriots. And Kraft looked at it and said, yeah, the drafting and the coaching hasn't been great the last few years, and I think we're ready to move on. And I think they both kind of looked at it and said, that's the way it goes,
Yeah, I mean, while I agree with that to an extent, I do think that at the end of the day, if Kraft never really pushed for it, that maybe Bill would have came back and said, you know what, I will stay. Like, so on one hand, I do kind of think maybe it was, from the team or the Kraft side of things that, they sort of says, all right, we do want to move on. And maybe it took a day or a second or whatever for Bill to be like, yeah, this is the right decision. But I mean, I'm with you as far as the way they stood up there together, and there was hugs and there were smiles and there was almost a kiss until Kraft realized that Bill was sick. But no, I'm with you. Like it was nice to see it not happen as ugly as we may have thought it could have been. Where like Kraft's trying to get everything out of Bill and get a trade involved, or Bill really. We made a lot, and I did too, of Bill's comments earlier this week saying I'm under contract. And I kind of took that at one point for him. He was going to play hardball. And he was saying, I'm under contract. You either have to fire me or I'm staying. But at the end of the day, I think that, whether he was setting that up on Monday or not, I'm sure that, the talks they had over the last 72 hours kind of made him realize and the Crafts realize that, look, like we've done this for so long. We built, as Bill said, beyond his wildest dreams, the best, football sports dynasty ever. And it was just time. And that's kind of where I sit right now. It's like, it does suck. And, we were talking, before we started recording, me and Matt, how, we're 26 and 25 and this is all we know. And it kind of is just hitting us now. Like it's now, almost 10 o'clock and this has been going on for, over 12 hours and it's still kind of a shock. And it's crazy, but it just feels, I guess, like it was right as much as it sucks. Like, it kind of just had to be done. And I think unlike the Brady decision, I think both sides will actually probably be better for this. Like, I think it's good for the Patriots to move on here. And that necessarily wasn't the case when they moved on from Brady.
One of the things that I think would be, interesting to ask here, if we had some truth serum and we could talk to both parties, would be, how was
Malcolm Butler benched?
Well, that's always going to be number one.
No.
But the other question would be, how does this go if Bill Belichick is 62 next season and not 72 next season? Because I think that's for all of the issues that we've seen under Belichick and the poor decisions and poor personnel moves and the coaching issues the last 4 years, I think Kraft would kind of give him the benefit of the doubt in a lot of ways long term, just because of his history. And I think that's where the timing of this becomes so tough. Belichick is looking at this saying, I need 14, 15 more wins to get this record. And I want to do that before I retire. And you look at the roster and the Patriots are not getting that anytime soon. And, Bill's probably got 3 more seasons left. If you draft a rookie quarterback for a coach who's trying to win now, who also will not be there for the whole life of the rookie contract, that just does not make sense unless you have something so thoroughly rock solid in place behind the scenes that you can feel confident in whoever the next guy is, and you can have a whole succession plan in place. And projecting 1 year out in the NFL is hard enough. Projecting out 3, 4, 5 years to have a perfect succession plan in place to take care of a potential future quarterback to make sure everything gets handed off nicely is so hard to do that it does. Like, I agree. I feel like this is the best for both parties. The Band-Aid had to get ripped off at some point. You do it with a full reset for a new quarterback and new offense, and Bill gets to go chase history with whatever team he wants to.
Yeah, I think if they had gone 8-9 this year too, they would have, it would have been a different conversation. Say they were picking 15th in the draft order, and they didn't have an opportunity to go get, a potential franchise-changing quarterback or have all this cap space. Like, yeah, I mean, you're right, Matt. The timing of it mixed in with Bill's age is so crucial because, you can look at it and say, well, yeah, let's give him another chance. And what if he can succeed with a rookie quarterback? But then you look at his age, and it's kind of, I'm just regurgitating what you just mentioned, but the timing of where they are in the draft order and how much cap space they have, and what Bill wants versus what the Crafts kind of need to rebuild this, where Bill is looking for some quick wins and get out of here and let me go to Nantucket. So it just it just makes sense.
When you mentioned the 8-9 thing too, I think if this team was better, you can talk yourself into, all right, we're going to go sign Kirk Cousins this offseason, and we're going to use that draft pick and take a tackle or receiver or whatever, and we're going to go all in on a short window. Or maybe we trade the pick and go get a receiver or whatever. We're going to go all in on a short window because we know that with a couple pieces, we can go from 8-9 to 11-6, get into the playoffs and make some noise.
Right.
And you just can't do that when you're 4-13. And in some ways, I feel like I said this, early on in the season too. I feel like the measuring stick in some ways was what the New York Jets did. We know that, nobody in that Pats front office likes the Jets. And when you finish behind a Jets team that went all in this season and lost their quarterback 4 plays into the season, and you split with them and you lose at home, I think that's kind of, if there was like a tie in the thought process for Kraft, that feels like the tiebreaker that's going to go against keeping Bill around.
Right. Yeah. One thing Holly mentions here that it hit her tonight, right? And like someone passed, right? And I'll tell you, my mom, I talked to my mom this morning, and my mom literally was crying this morning. And I know it's a little much, right? But it feels to a lot of people like they're losing a family member, like they're losing a loved one, right? Because Bill's been here for so long. He's given so much success, so much, winning. I mean, look, Bill, the Patriots won so much with Belichick and Brady that Patriots fans wouldn't be caught dead wearing a conference champions hat or t-shirt. Think about that. You're talking about a conference, you're one of the 2 best teams in the league. And it's like, there is a 0% chance I'm wearing that thing because who cares about winning the freaking AFC? We want to win the championship, right? And so that's the standard that was set by Belichick and Brady. And, obviously we just felt as though we were always going to win when we had Bill and Brady here. And to lose that, of course, Brady's already gone. And now to lose it with Bill is just kind of the end of an era. And it's so, it's tough.
Yeah, it is. Me and my friends have this conversation. You mentioned the AFC Championship thing, and when Antonio Pierce became the head coach interim in Vegas, and they were smoking cigars after their first win. I was and some half my friends, myself included, were like, "That's awesome!" F it, new coach, new regime, let's have some fun. But then another part of my friend group was like, no, you don't celebrate regular season victories. You should be pissed that this is the Super Bowl yet. And it's like, that's what's baked into your mind is it is a slow grind. It is one game at a time until you officially win the championship. And that's all because of Belichick. And that was his mindset, Brady's mindset, this team's mindset for 25 years. We don't celebrate until it's done. And I was watching one of the many, montages today about this run they had. And it was when I think it was the final Super Bowl they won with Brady in against the Rams. And they showed, it was like a screen grab of just Belichick's kind of face and body. And until Brady took the final knee, he was full game mode, no emotion, right. Watching it happen. And you hear the play-by-play, dubbed over his reactions. And finally they say, and Brady takes a knee in the game. And as soon as it's the one, his hands go up, he starts running around, but he did not do anything. He had no emotion until the game actually ended. And that was just, that's the epitome of it. It's all work until we actually win our championship.
Yeah. Totally true.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's, to touch on the other big coaching news of the week with Nick Saban there at Alabama, there's such a parallel too, is watching all the montages of him and his reactions after they win. And you know that it's funny to watch both of those guys approaching these things so similarly, which makes sense because they're both the greatest of all time for their level of the sport. Guys who had unbelievable dynasties around the same time, who coached together and learned together, having that same mindset. You know, just the culture that comes with. You look at the old Patriots clips and inside the locker room from like the 03 and 04 seasons, and they're on a historic winning streak, and they're like 6-1 or whatever. And you got Belichick in the locker room being like, 6 wins means nothing in this league. Like we got a lot of more games to go. That doesn't get you anything. And you know, as a fan, you're watching, they're like, oh, you're 6-1. We're going to the Super Bowl. Like this team's so good, right. And it's so different from the approach on the inside. It's so professional. And you know, I think it's going to be the big question going forward. What does the culture look like? Right. We can segue that into who the new hire could be if you guys want, but what it should look like, what it could look like, how that influences the hires in a lot of ways. The most interesting thing here, given some of the reporting about the culture not being as strong the last year or two.
Well, that's kind of where like the whole thing with, well, do we give Bill another year and can we kind of hold on to this one last time? I think that the writing was kind of on the wall culture wise, and not that, you know, Bill can't win. Like, I think he'll go win elsewhere. I do. I think he's going to have success wherever he goes. I think he can rebuild a culture. I think the way he runs a football team is correct. I just think that we keep using the perfect storm thing. I just think it kind of ran its course here. And I think that culture, it was starting to break a little bit, because when you don't win, like,
that's the key.
Yeah, exactly. Like this culture you build, it's for some people, it's not for others, but it's almost like you can guarantee that you're going to win a Super Bowl. I read something about Saban at Alabama, and I'm pretty sure like during his entire time at Alabama, if you stayed 4 seasons, you won a national championship. Like you can guarantee that. And so that he literally, that's his pitch. That was Saban's pitch. Like when you go to, some high school seniors' living room, like, do you want to win a national title? Then you come here. There's literally numbers that, suggest it. And so I think when the winning starts to die here, the culture, it can start to break a little bit. So that's why I look at the options here, and all signs kind of seem to point to Gerard Mayo at this point. That Ian Rappaport, wrote or reported earlier tonight that they actually baked into his contract that he can be the heir apparent and can be the next head coach, and that being in his contract can essentially void the Rooney Rule and any external requirements for candidates. So if they want to, they could have made Gerard Mayo the head coach today, and there would have been no repercussions for it. So I just wonder, and I look at that, and it's like, okay, is it completely Bill's culture? Like it can't be, and it's kind of it's gonna have to blend between this Bill Belichick hard-nosed culture mixed with it's 2023. It is not 2001 anymore. So
it's actually not 2023, but
it's 2024. Thanks, Matt. And with that, I'm gonna go to bed. But so it's it is 2024, and that goes to my point. It's not the early 2000s anymore. It's players are different. You have to relate to them more, and I think Mayo being a former player is going to help that cause. So if he can uniquely blend what he knows as a former player mixed with what Bill taught him as a coach, then I think it can succeed. But it can't just be carbon copied. Like you kind of have to, work with the times here. So yeah, I do. I think it's going to end up being Mayo, but I wouldn't write off Vrabel either right now.
I just want to jump in for a sec here because I hadn't realized this before, but Chad Graff snuck in his article earlier, this line. Now, barring a change of heart from owners Robert and Jonathan Kraft, Mayo will become Belichick's successor. An announcement could come as soon as the middle of next week, which feels as close to a confirmation as we've gotten on anything here, even with a timeline on it.
Yeah, you know what? I just the thing is, and I don't know, I'm not sure where obviously Chad knows a hell of a lot more than I do, that's for sure. But like, I wonder if that was written into Mayo's contract last year, which it was. And from all accounts, Mayo is a great leader of men. The guys in the locker room respect the hell out of him. He impressed in his interviews last year when he went and interviewed at places. The Patriots were obviously very impressed with him and gave him that contract last year. But I think for me, when he signed that contract, they didn't know that Mike Vrabel was going to be available. And so now Mike Vrabel's available. We know Kraft's feelings about Vrabel. We saw Vrabel back here. It certainly sounds like he wants to come back here. Now, you may have to choose between Gerard Mayo and Mike Vrabel. I don't know who they're going to choose. I don't. But I think you better listen to your players and gauge where their interest is. Mac Wilson felt pretty strongly about Gerard Mayo, which makes sense. He's a GM. He's a GM. He's a defensive player, right? And was coached by Gerard Mayo. But do people want to play for Vrabel? Will Vrabel get more respect in the locker room than Mayo will? And I don't know if that's necessarily true or not, but will Vrabel bring guys with him? Do they like the kid Peters in San Francisco? And is he more likely to come here as the GM if Vrabel is the head coach? So there are things that you have to take into account because yes, that says it in his contract. And so they're able to just bring him in as the head coach without interviewing anybody. But they don't have to do that. They just say that they can do that is all that says. And so they can still go through the hiring process. Yes, they'd have to follow the Rooney Rule and they'd have to do but fine. But that's okay. And so I just think for me, you look at it and say, okay, let's see where this goes. I wouldn't be surprised if they were interested in Vrabel. And I think Vrabel was interested in them as well. Mm-hmm. Is there a chance that Mayo stays on as defensive coordinator if Vrabel's here? Probably not, especially when I thought maybe that might be true. Now you're hearing this information about him being the taking over for Belichick. I can't imagine he stays after that. But, I think there's at least a possibility. Is there a possibility that Vrabel comes in as the defensive coordinator for Gerard Mayo? Seems unlikely. Seems like he would be able to get a head coaching job fairly easily. But maybe he says, screw it. I don't like any of the jobs out there. And so I'm going to come to New England for a year, still getting paid by Tennessee. I can come and do whatever I want and then go from there. So I think that's interesting. And I believe the Rooney Rule, someone asked about it. I believe the Rooney Rule is now 2 black interviews, I believe you have to give, right? Is it not just one? It used to be just one.
Yeah, now I believe it's 2. That's right. It is 2.
So even if you're interviewing Mayo, that's still not enough. You have to bring in, whomever it might be.
I think it's 2 outside the organization as well. I think it's 2 minorities outside the organization.
So my question is this: is this like a all or nothing situation where they can either promote Mayo or they have to go through the whole thing, or can they just interview whoever they want to interview and then later promote Mayo?
I think it's either. Well, theoretically you could promote Mayo, but it doesn't matter once you go through the whole process. Doesn't make a difference. You know what I mean?
So you're saying could they only interview? Could they just do Vrabel and Mayo as interviews type thing?
Yeah, if it came down to those 2, could they just interview those 2 and then promote Mayo? I suspect the league would have an issue with it, but I don't really, because if it's a succession plan, the succession plan is gone the second you start interviewing other people for the job. Right.
And then you start to wonder, and as you were talking through that, Pat, it's like, okay, so Mayo understood last year when he signed his extension that they have a plan for me to be the head coach. It's quite literally written and baked into my contract. But now, a shiny new toy is now on the market. And Gerard, we like you, but we kind of want to give this guy a chance too. Does then Mayo feel slighted after the Vrabel interview and instead of just promoting him from within like they planned to and like they wrote in his contract, they say, well, no, we kind of want to see this through. And if they can, I guess, politely say that to him, like, look, we do just want to exhaust all our options here. Maybe Mayo's fine with it. And at the end of the day, he becomes the head coach and it's no big deal. But if you even try and go through the Mayo interview, maybe that pisses Mayo off. And he says, well, maybe I don't want this here because you didn't actually want me as much as we thought. And that's why this whole Vrabel thing really does, throw a wrench into this. It's like, on one hand, it seems so easy that it should be Mayo. And now all of a sudden you get, reporting that Vrabel doesn't want, Vrabel and the Patriots have mutual interests, and maybe Vrabel does want to be here. And then he actually, not only at one point when this started to kind of circulate, Vrabel was still with the Titans. Now they just fired him, and he is a free agent. He can go wherever he wants, and so it does. And I wonder where they go, because you're right, Pat. Like, they have an infatuation with Vrabel, and Vrabel has an infatuation with this team, and so it could kind of go off the rails quickly. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we'll have to see. But it's certainly interesting.
I think there are three kind of complicating factors with the Mayo part too. I think the first is that when they add that clause to his contract, nobody expects to be invoking it a year later. You're thinking this is 2, 3, 4 years down the road. We're talking about doing this. And Mayo has probably less experience now than they thought he might have when they were going to be invoking this. And that might change the minds of some of the decision makers. The second part is that I know Albert Breer, Sports Illustrated, had reported earlier about some tensions inside the locker room with the other coaches after this clause was added, which if the idea was we're going to add this and in 3 years he's going to be the head coach, he's going to get the experience and he's going to work around these guys and it's all going to be perfect. That's one thing. It's another thing if he's not getting along with the guys in the locker room and if there actually is an issue there. And the last part, building off of that, is what the staffs would look like. I would assume Bill Belichick is going to want to take at least some of the people currently in that building to go with him wherever else he goes. I would also assume that if Gerard Mayo or Mike Vrabel is your head coach, they're going to want to keep some of the people in that building, and negotiating that is going to be a tricky thing. And if Gerard Mayo is going to be the next guy, and if Bill Belichick was on board with that, I have to wonder if some kind of preliminary negotiations on, how we split up the kids in the divorce, so to say, if those discussions already started with Bill and Kraft about how to proceed here, because I think that's, I don't know, who fills out these staffs and who ends up in the GM office, I feel like are in some ways bigger questions here than who ends up the head coach. I think you can get a guy who's qualified to be a head coach here with no issues. How they fill out the staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is big. On the defensive side of the ball, I think you'd like to maintain the culture and success that you've seen, and you don't want to shake that up in the process. And, balancing those for whoever it is that's making these calls is going to be quite a balancing act.
Here's my easy, off the top of my head right now, prediction on who at least is the core coaches for each staff. And I'm going to say that on Belichick's staff, it's Bill Belichick as the head coach, Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator, and Steve Belichick as the defensive coordinator. And then Mayo stays here, and he has Bill O'Brien stay on as his OC, and then they promote DeMarcus Covington as the defensive coordinator, who Covington, while he hasn't called plays and it's sort of been Mayo and Steve's thing here, he's sort of the third tier on that defensive coaching staff. He's had some he's always on those like NFL Network lists of like up and coming assistants who could be a coordinator next. I
was
think
he the head coach at the Shrine Bowl?
Yes, yeah, it was him and Troy Brown were the two. They were like the head coaches of each side of the ball, if you will. Yeah. And so, Covington, that's what Covington was. So that's a guy who I could see become their DC here if Steve were to leave and go with Bill, which I would assume that both Brian and Steve will probably follow along with Bill Belichick. I would think, but I guess we'll see.
Well, I actually think they shouldn't, in my opinion, because I think you look at like the Shanahans, right? And Mike said, "Kyle, go get a job somewhere else. I'm not hiring you until you're a good guy." I think he said, "I'm not hiring you until you have a top 5 offense in the league," right? Mm-hmm. And I think that you don't know how good of a coach Steve Belichick is if he's always coaching with his dad, right? And so if you can send him somewhere, wherever he goes, if he goes somewhere else and can prove that he's a good coach, and now he's proven in the NFL he's a good coach. He's not just coaching with his dad. Mm-hmm. He's proven that he's a good coach. And I think that it may not make a difference, but I think that, in some circles, I think that would go a long way to showing that he actually is a good NFL coach and not just kind of riding his dad's coattails. And I don't know if that's true, but I think that's what some people in the league think, in my opinion.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to bring up, is that you're going to see a split there at some point. And the question is, do the Belichick kids say, hey, we got 2-3 more years with our dad, we're just going to go where he goes and then get our own things after? Or do they say, this is the part where we split, we start to write our own story? And they both are plausible. We're going to know in, I feel like a week or two what ends up going on there, maybe a little bit longer. But that, I think, is a big thing to watch, because who fills out that staff is going to be incredibly important to the future of this team. And then I think the other part, if Mayo ends up taking a job elsewhere, I mean, first, if it's Vrabel who comes in, does Mayo follow Bill as a defensive coordinator? Does he get hired elsewhere as a defensive coordinator or head coach? Right. And if that happens, then, you're probably not bringing anybody back, because you assume Belichick's taking people and Mayo is taking people from that defensive staff. And you're probably not, if you return one or two guys, I think you'd feel lucky about it. So that's something. And then I'm going to go back to the Nick Saban situation here too, because there was reporting that Bill O'Brien did not get to pick his offensive staff when he came in last year. Now he may get to pick, or he and Mayo, or he and Vrabel together, or whatever, may pick an offensive staff if he's sticking around. And there might be a lot of guys at Alabama who are looking for new jobs now, who he might be tapping to come up with him to fill out some of those roles. So, I mean, that'll be, I think it's so complicated so fast. There's so many good coaches who are out.
So many variables. There's so many variables to this whole thing. And that's what makes it like, as like, I guess sad is the right word, and crazy and, real as this has become over the last 12 hours. It's like, okay, there are so many dominoes that are now going to fall, because you mentioned the staffs, and you mentioned too, and I talked about this earlier on, our podcast, like every single thing that happens in that building, football operations wise, is from Belichick down. So everything rises to the top to Bill. He controls everything, from the meals that are on the table for them, to who gets what locker, to what time, what time treatment is, and who gets where, when, what time the meeting, like every single thing, even what gets posted on like their social media somehow goes through the football operations to make sure that, everything stays in house and everything is cookie cutter like they want it. And that's gone as of this afternoon. Like Bill doesn't make the decisions there anymore. So, and now granted, they sent the players home and it is the off season and the coaches aren't there, but like, if Marcus Jones, and I'm going to use that because he's right behind you, Pat, but like Marcus Jones is like, okay, what time can I come in for treatment today on my torn labrum? I don't know. Nobody knows. Like, you know what I mean? Right. Like, is the strength staff reporting for Bill? Are they cleaning house? And I'm sure that these are being worked out behind the scenes, but it kind of feels like there might be some organized chaos going on in those walls until they sort of hash this out. And I just wonder, like, who is the point man now? Because for 24 years, Bill Belichick was essentially the point man for the football operation. He is now, as of right now, not employed by the team. So it's fascinating, and I would love to be a fly on the wall as to, what's actually going on in there. And it's exciting because it's, on one hand, it's sad. On the other hand, it's exciting to kind of see, how the page turns here for the franchise.
100%. Yeah, it's crazy. So, all right, Mike, we got to get you out of here. But before we do, I want a prediction from you, and we'll go around and we'll kind of both do it. I want a prediction from you. Number one, who's going to be the coach of the Patriots next year? Mm-hmm. And number two, where is Bill Belichick going to coach next year? I want those two things from you before we go. Well, we'll go Mike and then Matt, and then I'll go last.
All right. Look, I would really love for what's it called? I would love for Vrabel to be the head coach. Like, that is my pick. But what I think is going to happen is I do think it's going to be Gerard Mayo. I think the tea leaves are all there. I think that what Rappaport reported earlier about the contract is sort of a bombshell that, it hasn't, I feel like, really got as much traction even as I think it should. Like, for all intents and purposes, Mayo is next in line to be the head coach.
Just not to cut you off, but is there any precedent for that? Like, when's the last time this was written into somebody's contract?
So he followed up and basically said that it happened with Jim Caldwell and Tony Dungy in Indy.
Okay.
That happened there. And then also when Eric DaCosta took over as general manager of the Ravens for Ozzie Newsome. That was another one. It was the same thing. So those guys had it baked into their deals, and therefore they didn't have to go for a thing. So it is there is precedent for it. It has happened. It clearly isn't common, but it does happen. So that's kind of why I think, look, it feels like all signs point to Mayo. I think they might have got a little, jolt of, ooh, Mike Vrabel's out there. But at the end of the day, this has been their plan all along. They trust in it. They trust their gut. As Kraft says, measure 9 times, cut once. That's what they're going to do, and they're going to go with Mayo. So that's my prediction for them. As for Bill, I've gone back and forth on this a lot because I look at the LA Chargers job with Herbert, and that's as enticing as ever. I know they're in some cap hell, and I know that those guys are old, like Keenan Allen, Mike Williams always gets hurt and things like that. But if Bill's looking for quick wins and get out of here, the Chargers might be the spot for him. But then, man, I see Atlanta. Like Atlanta keeps coming up lately, and it's East Coast. He's not far. He doesn't have to go cross country. They have pieces on offense. Their defense is pretty good, and they're in a weak division. And that's another one where, like, okay, make the playoffs a couple of years and get out of there. The thing is, they need a quarterback. So I've got to beating around the bush because I don't know where I want to predict Bill to go, but I am going to say he is the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons next year. That's my
I like it. I like it. All right,
Well,
Matt.
Well, Mike and I are 100% on the same page here.
right.
I think it's Mayo, and I think it's the Falcons. But I will throw out kind of my dark horse. And Pat and I had talked about this before, but Mike, I want to get your thoughts on this. We're looking at a team that could be a contender, but that might have some coaching issues after this weekend. A team that needs a boost to its defense. A team with a quarterback that we've already heard Bill Belichick connected to before. This is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, steal it. I can't believe it.
If
Shouldn't
they-
let you go second.
If they lose this weekend, I don't know how things would work with Howie Roseman and Bill Belichick, and I think that would be a really complicating factor. But that's a team that's ready to win a championship with a couple right moves and an improvement to their defense. And I know there were ties with Bill and Hurts back at the draft back in 2020, and we've seen him use the mobile quarterbacks before, and he loves that. And what I think he's learned the AJ Brown mistake at this point too. I think he'd love to have AJ Brown. So
Right.
I think that'd be fun. I think he ends up in Atlanta, but I think Philly would be fun if that was on the table.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I'm kind of with you. And I know, Pat, that's what you were going to say. But
Yeah.
I heard someone, I think it was Nick Wright, say, like, talking about Nick Sirianni, who I think he's done a hell of a job the last couple of years being there, brought him to a Super Bowl, what have you. They started the year 10-1. But I think Nick Wright was the one who said, like, well, if he's gone, is anybody going to hire Nick Sirianni? And, like, I don't know. Like, is he that much of a huge head coaching candidate? So that's why I think they might move on from him. It would be kind of shocking, but that was floated again today. So that is a perfect ready-made team, probably one of the best rosters in football for Belichick to go and snag a few wins.
Yeah. And look, I do think I'd love to say that it's going to be Vrabel. And I think that there's an outside chance that it could be Vrabel. But after what we heard about Mayo, I mean, it wasn't an accident that stuff got released, right? Phil Perry said immediately it's going to be someone that, that the Crafts are very familiar with, that they have a good relationship with. That could be either Mayo or Vrabel. They have a great relationship with both of those guys, obviously. And so I think you have to take a long, hard look at Vrabel. But I also think that, Mayo could make sense. He's in the building already. If he has the respect of the guys, which, again, I don't know if he does, but it sounds like he does, right? And so for me, I look at that and think, okay, if it's Mayo, it's Mayo, and then we kind of go from there and see what happens. And again, and I mentioned this already, but maybe Vrabel comes and says, I'll be the D coordinator for a year. I'm getting paid 2 years by Tennessee anyways. I don't love any of these jobs that are open. And so what am I going to do? Go be the Chargers head coach? Like, whatever. But, like, so what? Why am I going to go there? Or do I really want to go to Atlanta with Arthur Blank breathing down my neck? Or whatever. So I don't know. I'd be surprised if Mayo did that, but at least it's not outside the realm of possibility. The Eagles thing is interesting for me, for Bill. I do think that that's a great roster. I love Jalen Hurts. I think that he would work well with Jalen Hurts. I believe Hurts got taken before. Did Hurts get taken before Duggar, correct? And they were, I think that they were going to take him at that spot if he lasted to them, which he didn't. So, nevertheless, the other team, and my dad texted me, my dad and I were talking about this earlier, and he mentioned this team as well, because Adam Schefter did come out and say that there's at least one team that's very interested in Belichick that hasn't fired their coach yet. And I think in a similar situation, in the same exact division, is the Dallas Cowboys. Mm-hmm. And you're in a situation where you have a hell of a roster. You have the closest thing to Lawrence Taylor that we've seen in the league since Lawrence Taylor left. And Mike McCarthy stinks. If they somehow lose in the first round of the Green Bay Packers, Mike McCarthy's not surviving the weekend. And so that would be the perfect spot. He's following in Bill Parcells' footsteps and so on and so forth. So, that's interesting for me. I think NFC East and I think the NFC South. I really think the Falcons' job makes a lot of sense. But the NFC East and the NFC South makes a ton of sense to me. And so we'll see where they go. But again, I lean kind of towards that Philly or Dallas spot because they're good teams. If he wants to win, okay, you can go to Atlanta, but now you have to sign Kirk Cousins, or how are you going to get a quarterback, right? So that's what we got to figure out. So, anyways, all right. Well, Mike, thank you so much. Before you go, where can people read you and hear you and find you and everything else?
Oh boy, where can't you at this point? No, we got let's see. You can read all my stuff, Pat's coverage, everything, WEI.com, 6 Rings and Football Things podcast with Fitzy and Andy Hart. We'll be there basically, all week, all day, trying to figure out what's going on with the Pats. So you can listen to that, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. And follow me on Twitter at Mike Kadlick, where you can, read all my Patriots takes and agree or disagree with them, whatever you want to do. But
I love it. I love it.
And you'll get updates on the running too.
Yes.
Yeah, come for the Patriots takes, stay for the updates on the marathon training.
That's correct. I love it. I love it. So, all right, Mike. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming through. Love having you. We'll have to have you on again soon. All right. I don't know what. I think we may have lost him there. See you, Mike. All right. That was awesome. He's a great guy. We love having Mike on the show. We're going to get into a break. And then when we come back from the break, we'll just do a few more things about there's a few more things I want to touch on. And then we'll kind of get you guys out of here. We'll do the last few segments to get you guys out of here. All right? The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays, find bets in the new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, New Jersey, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, and Virginia. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelpline.ma.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts. Or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right. That was great. We love having Mike on the show. He's a great guy. So we've gone back and forth about Belichick, the coach, and rightfully so. He's a great coach. I think Belichick, the GM, doesn't get as much credit. And I know Kraft said something about, Bill not getting the full reins until after the third Super Bowl, which I really hadn't heard until today. But that's interesting to me. I'm a little surprised, to be completely honest with you, that's actually the case. But nevertheless, I was going back and forth because whatever, talking about people talk about how, Brady's the only reason that Belichick was any good. And of course, all the crazies come out today. And we were talking about this before the show, Matt, and
close enough.
I know. Well, it starts with an M. You go back to some of those teams, those 03-04 teams, where they both went 14-2 and won the Super Bowl and, won 21 straight games and the whole nine, right? And that 03 team, okay, I was looking up stats, and it's almost unbelievable when you look at the numbers. That 03 team allowed 21 offensive touchdowns. When they were on defense, they allowed 21 touchdowns. And they forced 36 turnovers. I mean, that's got to be that's one of the most insane defenses I've ever seen. They let Malloy go. They signed Rodney Harrison. They just, Richard Seymour comes into his own. Ty Warren's there. Like, that team was an absolute wagon. And the offense was great, and the defense was incredible. And then they got better the next year when they added Corey Dillon on offense. And they just, I mean, those 2 years are two of the best teams that football's ever seen. But that 03 defense, especially the numbers, but that 03 defense is outrageous.
Yeah. And I think, even you go a year forward too, the 04 defense, second in points allowed defensively, despite having an insane rash of injuries at the cornerback position. Obviously, Ty Law is the guy who headlined that, but they had to put Troy Brown in a defensive back, and they had a defense that shut down what at that point was the greatest offense we'd ever seen in the NFL, led by Peyton Manning that season, tearing it up through the air, holding them to 3 points in the playoffs. Right. Being able to do that, as I think, as a GM and a coach, that's both for Bill, being able to get depth at the cornerback position and identify traits in his players, knowing that Troy Brown can do that and getting that out of them, and the coaching aspect of that too. Just incredible stuff.
Right. And listen, there's no doubt that he's lost an edge since Brady's gone. There's no doubt. And I'm not denying that. And I'm not sitting here saying that Bill should still be the coach. But what I am saying is that, I think people soon forget. People forget very easily. The 2001 Patriots set a record for the most return touchdowns in the history of the NFL, and I believe that record is still standing for defensive special teams. They played 3 postseason games. They scored 3 offensive touchdowns. 3. So, it's not as though they were a dominant offense. And, of course, Brady gets hurt in the AFC Championship game, and the first game is a snowstorm and whatever, right? But the fact is that, that defense and special teams really saved them. I mean, they scored 2 touchdowns against the Steelers, right? And so that's where you start looking at it and saying, okay, well, doesn't that matter? You had a pick 6 in the Super Bowl, right? And so those are the things that I look at and say, all right, 2 special teams touchdowns against the Steelers, a pick 6 against the Rams in the Super Bowl, and 1 touchdown in the game, in the snow in New England. And I just think, you don't give Bill enough credit for that stuff. Now, again, Brady in 2017 and in 2016 and in 2018, of course, was great. Of course, they won the Super Bowl 13-3 in 2018, but that doesn't matter because Brady was incredible. He's no doubt. But to say that it was all Brady and no Bill is stupid. And then to use the argument that it's because Brady went down to Tampa, who, by the way, went 7-9 the year before. Jameis Winston turned the ball over 36 times. 36 times! And they won 7 games. So, they already had a great team, and then they added Antonio Brown, and then they added Gronkowski, and then they added Leonard Fournette, and all of a sudden they were unstoppable. And so it's just kind of yes, Brady's incredible. He's the GOAT. So isn't Bill. And I'm convinced, and we'll never know because it didn't happen, but I am convinced that if they were separate, if Bill had had a different quarterback and Brady had a different coach, that they would never be the players that they are. I do think Brady would have won a Super Bowl, and Bill would have won a Super Bowl at least. But I don't look at it and say, oh, that Bill would have won 8 Super Bowls. No, it's stupid. That's stupid to think that, and to think that Brady would be the guy somewhere else, I think is equally silly.
Yeah, and look at the number of kind of GOAT level players that Bill Belichick touched. Lawrence Taylor, we start there. We go back. Arguably the greatest defensive player to ever play this game. Obviously, Tom Brady, or you ask Tom, he's not the player he is today without what Belichick was able to do for him, the way they were able to read defenses together, analyze tape, and go through the process, and everything that came with their relationship. Rob Gronkowski, identifying that talent, drafting, developing him, taking what is a somewhat unique personality and fitting that into the NFL world in a professional way and making it work, which applies to Lawrence Taylor as well with his off-field shenanigans. You go to special teams. He didn't develop Vinatieri, but Steven Gostkowski is not a Hall of Famer, but one of the great kickers of this era. And Matthew Slater, who, for what he did, his specific role in special teams is the greatest of all time at that. And that's all under Belichick. And it's the fact that he's had so many great players play for him doesn't take away from Bill Belichick's legacy. It adds to it. These guys are great because they play for him. It's not the only reason why. They have obviously innate abilities on their own. But it's the fact that these things came together is what enabled that greatness. And it goes to so many people in the front office and the coaching staffs as well that he had. Obviously, the last 5 years kind of sour at the way things happened and some bad moves, but we're talking 5 out of 24 here in New England.
That's the thing. It doesn't wipe out what happened in the past, right? So, yes, it's been bad, but it doesn't wipe out what happened in the past. Also, Old Man Mob apparently commented almost exactly the same thing I said about the Bucks. I didn't even see it, but good call. Apparently, it was before I said what I said too. So good call over there, Old Man Mob. Great minds think alike, as we say. So, but no, it's it is one of those funny things for me that we tend to look at it and just see, what have you done for me lately? That's what the NFL is, right? What have you done for me lately? And I get that. I understand that. And that's why Bill Belichick is no longer the head coach of the New England Patriots. I understand. But again, when we talk about it, it doesn't have to be, well, he sucked. It was all Brady. And it's like, well, I mean, I don't know. Was it? And DeLuna just said too, was people still doubt Bill if he goes to one of those great teams, right? If he goes to the Cowboys, or if he goes to the Eagles and wins now, will people still discredit him? And my answer to that question should be no, because those teams can't win. And if he goes there and wins with them, to me, then that's a situation. So I look at it and just think, I'm rooting so hard. And someone said this already, and I can't go back and find it, but I am rooting so hard for Bill to win one more championship, to go somewhere and shut all those stupid ass fans up that have said that it was all Brady and no Belichick. And Ashton said it a little bit earlier. It will stop that debate. That debate ends. If he wins a championship, that debate is over, because Brady did the same thing somewhere else. Now Belichick does the same thing somewhere else. And if that's the case, I'm not it's just shut everyone up. That's what I'm rooting for.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if I was thinking about this earlier, Pat, but I noticed that when we started having this debate was 2017-ish. I feel like is when that started happening. You know what else? You know what else was happening around that time? Brady versus Manning debate had already been settled.
Right.
And the Brady versus Montana debate at that point, once Brady hit 5 rings, was settled. That one is over. And so it was all right, the only thing we can debate now is which part of this greatness is responsible for different amounts of it, which I think it just goes to show, we got too much free time on our hands to debate this stuff.
Definitely.
And then I also think there's a certain did you watch The Last Dance? Michael Jordan documentary?
Some of it. I didn't watch all of it, but I did watch some of it.
There's a certain The Last Danceification of this, where that whole documentary talks a lot about the struggles between the head coach, the front office, and Michael Jordan, and the way that those all came together. And I think people kind of view the Patriots through that lens, which doesn't make sense, and especially should not make sense after what we saw today. You didn't have that with the Bulls, with Michael Jordan and the owner, and the coaches and guys saying, "Hey, we're a Bull forever" or whatever. This is it for Kraft in New England, not Kraft, Belichick in New England, and it could be negative, and it wasn't. Kraft talking about their relationship getting closer, and both guys getting choked up while they talk, and it's clear that the reason this organization has been as good as it has been for the last 25 years is because you got an owner who's one of the best in football. He had a coach who's the greatest of all time in football, and players who were some of the best in football, including the quarterback, Tom Brady. And it's the fact that all of those things came together. It's the ultimate team sport. You need it from the top of leadership down to the role players and personnel guys and video cut up guys in the back. You need all those guys able to contribute, and they've been able to get that on a consistent basis for 25 years. I mean, we're talking about for 18 years in that run, they were so good at all of those details that they would be one of the 2 best teams in football 50% of the time.
Yeah.
You know how ludicrous that is for a sport with this much luck and, an oblong ball that can bounce any way it wants on the field and games decided by inches. It's so ridiculous. And it's a testament to everybody in this organization. And it's sad that it's over. But, next stage is going to be exciting. It's going to be different. Will it be good? No idea. But it's going to be different. We're going to see some new things out there that we haven't seen. And looking forward to seeing what the next steps are.
Agreed. All right, so we have a live stream update here. Ed Jonachik says, if Bill wins another championship as head coach, I'll eat a football. So I'm telling you right now, Ed, I'm holding you to that. You're on the screen right here. Here you are right here. We will track you down. If Bill Belichick wins a championship, we will get you on the live stream, and you can eat a football live on YouTube on this channel. Pretty awesome. Also,
great content.
Maka says, why are Coach Belichick's 2 Super Bowl wins not with the Giants not counted when Brady's with the Bucs counts? And I agree with you. And MA Football Guy says that he was the DC, which is true. He was the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
His defensive game plan against the Bills is in the Hall of Fame. It's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. His defensive game plan was so good that it's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's so good to a point that I remember Diossi telling the story, and Steve Diossi telling the story, and they got goal to go situation with the Bills. They call timeout, and Bill comes over and he says, "Okay, first down, they're going to run this play. Second down, they're probably going to run this play. Third down, you're going to see this guy come in, then they're going to run this play, and then fourth down, they're going to go for it again, and they're going to run this play." And he said all 4 plays were right, and we stuffed them at the goal line. And it's like, I don't know how he did it, but he knew what they were going to do before they did it. 4 plays before they did it, he knew what they were going to do. And so it's one of those things where you look at it and just say, man, like, he was that good back then. And
he's that good.
That's one of those things where it's like, yes, he wasn't the head coach, but defensive coordinator-wise, he really was that good and that much of a reason that they won.
When's the last time you saw a coordinator get carried off on the shoulders of his players?
Yeah.
And it's like it won't count towards his record in the same way it does for Brady, because Brady played, and for record, we when it comes to like record in games, we count QB and head coach only. Essentially, we don't really do it for anybody else, but Bill has those rings. He I assume he still has them somewhere. He physically has those rings.
Yep.
And he earned them, and he's been fantastic. Before we get into our last segments, can we touch on the Vrabel versus Mayo thing too? Because we got into it a little bit, but I'd like to.
Yes, sure. Before we do, Ed asked about Bill to the Giants, and I think that's an interesting idea as well. The Giants obviously haven't fired Brian Daboll. I don't know if they will. And I don't know if Bill would want to go to the Giants because you're kind of stuck with Daniel Jones in that situation.
Yeah.
Maybe you will, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But I think you're probably stuck with Daniel Jones. And I don't know how much he would be intrigued by that. It is the Giants, though. And we know that Bill loves the Giants. And so I think that it's not outside the realm of possibility. It would just be surprising based on what the roster looks like. If he wants to win right now, you're in what is a challenging division with 2 good teams. I would find it unlikely for him to go to the Giants, even though like the sentimentality of it, I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever. You got very sentimental for him to go back to the Giants, but I don't know if that's the right spot for him.
And if sentimentality were that big to Bill, I think he would have done what it took to stay in New England.
Yeah,
too. Sure. I think he's willing to go somewhere new here. I think Atlanta makes sense. For the Mayo versus Vrabel thing, I was actually talking to my dad about this earlier, and I side with Mayo here. I think that's at least the way I lean.
Yeah,
pretty simply because from what we can tell, there was a decent culture in that locker room, especially on defense, and they got good things going on that side of the ball. And this is one of the rare opportunities where you can fire a coach and keep some of your culture, leadership, however you want to phrase it, intact. You can always hire somebody from outside the building. That's always an option for you in the future. And with what we've heard Mike Vrabel say about New England, I feel like you could pretty much tempt him to come to New England at any point you want if you love him as a coach. And New England, as long as the Crafts are owners and seem to be doing a good job like they've been doing, will always be a desirable location, and you're not going to have a hard time hiring guys who are considered quality.
Yeah.
So this is your one time to hire somebody who could be a long-term answer, who already has stuff in the building and makes sense. And if he doesn't work, you got a lifetime to figure out anybody else from outside the building from a new culture to do it if you want. And the other thing with Mayo is that the issue with the culture was on offense, and I think the real wild card here, there's kind of an assumption that it'll be McDaniels or Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator. And the interesting thing would be if that doesn't happen, if they go outside the building and overhaul the offensive staff. I don't think it happens, but I don't think we can rule it out yet. And I think that's something to keep an eye on, because there have been tensions there. And especially if there's a new GM coming in, when the new GM comes in, whoever it ends up being. And that is something I have no read on. I'm just going to wait for the announcement. Wouldn't be shocked if they're saying, hey, I want my guys on offense. And I think that'll be a point where, I said it the last time we talked before we knew it was going to happen. You need everybody on the same page when it comes to the offensive style. That's the number one goal. Here is your next step. And the last thing you want is to keep Bill O'Brien because he's there, and you get a GM in the building who prefers a different style of offense. And the quarterback you draft is somebody who fits that style of offense and doesn't fit Bill O'Brien. And then you're just trying to adjust things on the fly. Like that's not what we want here.
Right. And listen, I think it's a good point by you. I really do. And I think it makes sense, but at the same time, I question whether, well, I guess the real question for me is how good can he be? And I don't know the answer to that question, right? It's an unknown right now. I think the biggest thing for me depends on who do you get as a GM, who do you get as an offensive coordinator? Those are the two questions for me that matter the most, because, I really do think that the GM and the offensive coordinator are going to be the two biggest pieces in this puzzle, because you need to fix the offense and you need to be more aggressive than the Patriots have been in acquiring talent. And so I think that those are going to be the two biggest question marks, and we'll see where it goes from there. Vrabel and Mayo are both defensive head coaches.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're both open to more open and aggressive offenses, I think, based on what I've heard. And so if that's the case, let's see what we can do on the offensive side of the ball.
Now, if Mike Vrabel's bringing in was it Arthur Smith, the old Atlanta head coach, that I have no interest in. Yeah. And it's frustrating too, because I actually used to really like Arthur Smith's offenses, but the things he did well all went away this year. Like if they got back to the old things they did well, then maybe I can get on board with that and I can see how it would work. But I don't. After what we saw last year, that seems risky.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I think the outside name here for offensive coordinator would be somebody like Wes Welker, who now has a ton of experience, and it brings you up to an interesting situation where your coaching staff could be Terod Mayo, Wes Welker, DeMarcus Covington, and that's a nice young coaching staff to lead this up. And
he's under the Shanahan tree. Like we talk about wanting someone from the Shanahan tree. Maybe Wes is that guy from the Shanahan tree, right? Obviously, he has history here, and so we'll see.
Yep. And I don't necessarily think we need somebody from it. I'm pretty impartial when it comes to the scheme they run at this point, because just based on what we've seen in the past. Like I just give me a cohesive scheme that everybody's on the same page with, that everybody's on board with, and we're going to get players to fit this, and we're going to try to do it, because that's better than what they've been doing. And I don't know how much value there is in being the 8th or 9th team in the NFL running a Shanahan offense. Then you're just getting into you're fighting with a lot of teams for the same types of players, and it becomes difficult. So there's merit to zigging when everybody else zags and going for, I don't know, a ground and pound running attack. So something like what the Lions do. It doesn't have to be like Ben Johnson specific, but that's kind of where Arthur Smith had been good in the past. That's where Josh McDaniels had been good in the past. That's where his best stuff is, his run game stuff. So yeah, I can go a lot of different directions with this. I just want to see an idea. Let's have some conviction behind something.
Yeah, I agree. Also, DeLuna asked about Vrabel as a GM. I can't imagine that happens. I'd be shocked if Vrabel came in as the GM. And so I would kind of dismiss that one off the way. I just think that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
They did also ask about what Fields, what's going to happen with Fields and the Bears. And that's not a discussion for this podcast. We will get into what the Patriots are going to do at 3. I think that they have a ton of different options. And of course, there's going to be some different things that happen, right? I look at it and just think like, okay, this could be interesting. And they could go in this direction, they can go in that direction. And so there's a lot of different directions they could go in. I just do look at it and think that they're going to do something with the Bears, whether it's trading for Justin Fields or whether it's trading up to number 1. We'll talk about it. But I just think that I don't want to get into that now because it opens up a whole can of worms. But I do think that the majority of what we're going to be talking about over the next few months, I think, is going to revolve around the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I think that's going to be big here. So we'll see. I also note, just while we're doing miscellaneous stuff here, Mac Wilson had posted a picture of Gerard Mayo, I think on his Instagram story or something, in support, which is, I think notable. I am shocked at how much Mac Wilson seems to have become like a culture guy for this team.
I agree.
And a relatively important piece. And if the guys on defense like Mayo and will rally around him as a head coach, then I'm full on board with that hire. You can get offense by hiring a good offensive coordinator. I think there's questions about what Mayo is going to do as a head coach, but unless you've been a head coach before, there's going to be questions about everybody. And Mike Vrabel, who's been a head coach before, still has plenty of questions. He's done a lot good there. He's done a lot that there's some questions. So
it's one of those hard things for me that I don't know in which direction they're going to go, but you do want to kind of listen to what the players want. And so I wonder, what do those players want? You saw Kendrick Bourne tweet out something about Belichick and how he loves Bill and so on and so forth. And he says, let me know where you're going and I'll pull up. Right. Yep. And so that was interesting, right? That he talked about wanting to come back to New England, but does he really want to come back to New England or does he want to play for Belichick? So that's interesting. Old Man Mob saying that Jamie Collins, right, retweeted something about or quote tweeted something and said that, he'll be back. They'll be back in the playoffs. Year 1.
Yep. Jamie Collins, playoff bound first year. Remember this tweet, quote tweeting the rap tweet earlier about Mayo being the next guy.
Right. So we'll see. But I think it's going to come down to what the Crafts think, what they see in the locker room, what type of culture builder is Mayo. Is Mayo actually a real leader in the locker room? And I think he is. But do they think that he can be a leader moving forward? And can he be the guy and take that step from defensive coordinator to head coach? Remember now, you're not going from defensive coordinator of the Texans to head coach of the Patriots. You're going defensive coordinator of the Patriots to head coach of the Patriots. So it is a little bit different because people are going to look at you differently. Obviously, you're still a head coach, but people are going to look at you differently. And so I think there are some questions there.
When we talk about that, I think the thing that makes me worry here a tiny bit if it is going to be him, if you keep Bill O'Brien was a coach there when Mayo was a player. And I think you worry about the hierarchy and the dynamics between the two of those. And I'm sure Mayo is perfectly capable of being, the figurehead there. Yeah. But Bill O'Brien is a guy who's not just been a head coach in the NFL before, but like a winning head coach in the NFL with seniority, and a guy who literally coached ahead of Mayo for the same organization. If that's something that's going to ruffle feathers at all, if that's something that's going to be an issue, that has to be addressed now. You can't go into the season with that being a concern.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because we're not, but 2 years in a row now of dysfunction with the offensive coaching staff, and that can't happen. I can deal with bad players. I can deal with bad draft picks. I cannot deal with a bad system and structure on offense.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. By the way, Team 617 pointed out to me that Gerard Mayo is not the defensive coordinator. He is correct about that, but
he's kind of the defensive coordinator,
right? So
they not just don't give out the title, but they basically have co-defensive coordinators that kind of share it with he and Steve Belichick, as far as we're aware from here.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, let's get into our last segments. This has been a great show. It's surreal. It's been surreal, to be honest with you. It doesn't feel real yet. I'm sure it will. But it's one of those interesting things. So let's get into our final segments, and then we're going to have this whole offseason to talk about who the coach is going to be, who the Patriots are going to draft at number 3, or if they're going to move or whatever. So we got a bunch of shows coming at you. Don't worry about that. So let's get first into our prop bets. So just to do a recap on the prop bets, we did 3 last weekend, and the reason why we did 3 is because I was 3 behind you in the last week of the season. And one of us went 0-3, which was kind of cool. It was me, so that didn't help. But I went 0-3. You went 1-2. You had Sam Darnold over on the touchdowns, Josh Allen over on the touchdowns, and Falcon Saints under. There's Sam Darnold one hit, the other 2 did not.
Mm-hmm.
I had Alec Pierce over 28.5 receiving yards. He didn't even have a catch. James Cook over 68.5 rushing yards. Nope. And Eagles minus 10.5. So that was really bad. So I finished the season 11-26, which is so terrible. And you finished the season 15-22. So for those of you that didn't know or remember what is going to happen, sometime this spring, I am going to run and pass the Patriots conditioning test for offensive and defense linemen. So that's going to be interesting.
I'm glad I avoided that one.
I have to figure out exactly what it's going to be. I'm not 100% sure what it is. I got to figure out what it is. But it's going to be tough. But we'll have to start training for it. Maybe I'll have to train with Mike, and he'll be running a marathon. I'll be getting ready to run the Patriots conditioning test. But yeah, it'll be fun. So, but we were going to do just a little. We're not going to do any sort of competition for it, but I do think it's interesting to kind of go through and pick the winners this week, and we'll kind of do it all.
Do we want to do winners losers for the playoff games, or do we want to do against the spread? I'm fine either way.
I think ATS is easier.
Against the spread, all right.
Yeah.
All right. You got them up, or you want me to pull them?
Go ahead and pull them up.
All right. So we'll start with the afternoon game, which they always put the Texans in the Saturday afternoon game when they're in the playoffs. Every single time, the Browns are favored by 2.5 points in Houston. Who are you taking?
I am taking the Cleveland Browns minus 2.5.
I am with you there. I'm definitely taking the Browns. I like this Houston team. I think if they had any other matchup in this spot, I'm probably picking them, but this is the worst case scenario for 100%. Them. Yeah. Then later that night in the Peacock only game, which I hate, dumb,
so
stupid. I'm not doing this. In what is currently projected to be a negative 30-degree wind chill in Kansas City, the Dolphins go into Kansas City. This is something. Chiefs favored by 4.5 points. Where are you going?
I'm taking the Chiefs minus 22.5. No, but the Chiefs minus 4.5. The Dolphins may not score a point. I just in that type of weather with the candy ass uniforms, nope.
Well, and the Chiefs have a good defense. The Dolphins are so injured right now. Yeah. This was the worst case scenario for the Dolphins. I feel like it would have been so much more fun if we got Browns at Chiefs and Dolphins at Texans. I think those would be way more entertaining matchups for us.
Yes.
But yeah, I think my only concern picking this is that I don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. But I will take the Chiefs to cover this spread at 4.5 points. We move on to Sunday. We head up to a cold, windy, and potentially snowy Orchard Park as the Bills host the Steelers. Bills are favored by 10 points.
Oh, God. All right. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. Steelers plus 10. Jesus.
Dude, we're completely in alignment right now, Pat.
That's funny.
Yeah.
You know what? I think that the Steelers play such ugly, terrible games that they're going to keep it within 7. They're going to keep it within under 10 points. And that's the only reason why I think I'll take Steelers plus 10. I don't think they really have any chance to win the game, especially without TJ Watt. But I'll take the Steelers plus 10. I also wouldn't be surprised. SW fan says the Bills are going to win by 20. I wouldn't be surprised to see that either. So
yeah, it wouldn't shock me, but with these weather conditions, the type of wind we're going to see, obviously we've seen Allen play well in that before, but
Yeah.
I don't think the way they've played this year, I think the Steelers, I think the Bills had previously been underrated, but are now a tiny bit overrated, and Steelers aren't good, but they'll drag you down to their level. So I'll take the Steelers to cover.
So Old Man Mob just said that the game could be moved to Cleveland. I don't know.
It won't. No,
I don't think it will be.
No, it won't. It was reported earlier that was false.
Okay.
It will. There's no contingency. They're playing this game in Buffalo.
Well, there you go. I know that happened once or twice last year, but
Yeah. Now this is, and there could be snow. That's what they're looking at coming in. That lake effect Saturday into Sunday. I've been tracking this weather all week because I love some bad weather playoff football.
It's the best.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're both taking the Steelers in that one. We go to the early or the late afternoon game on Sunday, which is Packers at Cowboys. Cowboys favored by 7. What do you think?
Give me the Packers +7.
Interesting.
I'm doing it. I think it's a little crazy, but I'm down for it.
I'm taking Cowboys here. I think they cover. My hot take on all this is that I think the Cowboys probably make it to like the NFC Championship game here, or potentially beyond, depending on what the matchups look like. I think the bracket finally breaks nicely for them here, and Mike McCarthy, while not being the best coach in the world, I think is actually having probably the best season of his career, and I think we're going to see it here. Obviously, still plenty of flaws in his makeup there, but I kind of like the Cowboys in these playoffs. I'm taking them to cover. That's pretty much a guarantee that the Packers are winning this game. So, yeah,
I don't know. I'm pretty bad at this too, so you never know.
Yeah. We got the Sunday night game, the revenge game. Jared Goff against Matthew Stafford in Detroit. Lions favored by 3. How do you feel?
Just absolutely horrifying. I just, it's so frustrating because I want the Lions to win so bad. And now they have a tough matchup against the Rams with Matthew Stafford coming in. Friggin' Sam Laporta got hurt. Like, there's so many negative things against the Lions. I just can't possibly bring myself to pick against the Lions, though. I can't. So I'm taking, you said 3.5?
Yeah.
I'm taking the Lions -3.5. I have to.
Or 3.
I have to,
3.
Okay. I have to, because I have to believe that there's justice in this world, and that the Lions, having the first home playoff game since 1993, are going to win and not lose to Matthew Stafford. But we'll see. But that's what I want to have happen.
See, I am rooting for the villain here. What I want in this game, what I'm predicting in this game, is that we're going to get a Matthew Stafford game-winning touchdown drive for the Rams to silence that crowd.
Oh God, that's horrifying. That is just
give me the villain. Like that to me is so much fun for him to go back into that building and shut them up. I think that would be incredible.
The Lions have figured out every single way to lose. They haven't done it that way yet, and so it makes sense. But they also didn't do him wrong either. Like, they moved on from him because they had to. They actually did right by him, And so to lose to him is horrifying.
Well, and that's what I think. Like, I think everybody's going to go for the feel-good story here, but this is a Rams team that has played well, and the Lions are a little bit banged up. And what the Rams can do offensively, I think, is a really perfect match for what the Lions do poorly defensively, and I think that could cause issues. We might get a little bit of a high scoring game here. Last team with the ball wins type of thing, and give me the Rams in this one. Give me the Rams +3.
I like it. All right, last game, right? Last game of the weekend.
Yep. Monday night game. Buccaneers hosting the Eagles. Eagles are favored by 3.
Yep. I'm going Bucs +3.
I'm definitely going Bucs +3. I saw a report earlier that Jalen Hurts hasn't been able to throw at practice, and AJ Brown was out of practice, and I assume both of those guys are going to play. But if they are that banged up in the way the team has been playing,
it doesn't look good. But I will say, this is the perfect moment. This is the perfect spot for the Eagles to win a game, right? Like, this is who they were a few years ago when they beat the Patriots. Like, nobody believed in them. Everyone counted them out. They're one of the best teams in the league. Then they started falling. Of course, that year they lost their quarterback. But it's all those things, and they just come together and figure it out.
Yeah.
But I mean, how cool would it be? You talk about comeback stories. How amazing would it be if Baker played the Browns in the Super Bowl and beat the Browns in the Super Bowl? That would be incredible. If the Browns somehow made the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco and then lost to Baker Mayfield, the guy that they got rid of, that would be incredible.
Yeah.
So.
See, if you look at my predictions here, what we're setting up is a pair of divisional games here where you're going to get Browns Ravens and you're going to get Rams Niners next weekend. And I think that's a ton of fun because I think both of those 1 seeds are far and above everybody else in the division. But I also think the thing that can take them out is somebody in the division who knows them well and who can hit their pressure points, which I think both of those teams can. So I think that sets up some drama.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we'll see. All right, let's get to the trivia question, and then we'll do this week in sports history.
Yep. And is this going to be our last trivia for this section, and then we'll do a winner and we'll start a new one?
No, you know what? Let's do it all the way to the end of the playoffs, and then we'll pick the winner, and then maybe we'll do one for an off-season one too. Yeah.
All right. Well, last week's trivia question was which Patriot scored his first career touchdown over the Jets in the final week of the 2020 season? The answer was Devin Ozzie. Shout out to TJ Pinder, who had that one first. The question for today, and I'll let you know, there's also going to be a bonus part of this. So there's going to be 2 answers you can give, and so there's a bonus point that can be earned on this one. The first question, simple. Which team did the New England Patriots host in Bill Belichick's first game as head coach of the team? And the bonus question, who scored New England's first touchdown in that game? So throw your answers out there.
I love it.
We'll get that in.
Not week. One you'd expect, by the way. This is not an expected one.
No, I got a question for you here, Pat, because we're talking about future shows for us. I feel like we should be doing a Monday show next week. No, not a Sunday show because we got a Monday night game.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'm down with that. I'm down with doing a Monday show. We can do. I think we should. What I think we should do is, we should probably do like a shorter one and just recap. Unless something happens, just recap those ones. You know what I mean? That's what I'm thinking. Like recap the playoff games instead of doing anything else.
I like that.
So yeah. So, all right. So, you want to go to? Well, we just did that. So let's do this weekend sports history.
All righty.
Okay.
I'm on it.
All right. Here we go. I always have to forget the don't loop the track. Here we go.
And now for something we think you'll really like. This week in sports history.
All right. So I have one. I already told you what mine was, Matt, and it comes with a story. So 2015, which is now 9 years ago somehow. 2015 yesterday, which is January 10th, 2015, the Patriots played a divisional game against the Baltimore Ravens, and of course came back twice down 14 to win that game. Of course, that was the unbelievable throw from Edelman to Amendola. That was like one of the best passes that Brady's ever thrown as a Patriot, and I think it gets overlooked. And so it just it was incredible. So, of course, they win that game. The story that comes along with it is a much sadder story. My wife, so I had, at that time, I had a just under 4-year-old and a just under 2-year-old at the time. And it was not, it was tough. It's fine, whatever. I'm going to the game. My wife's like, I'm not feeling great. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to the game. I'll be all right, whatever. So I get a call with about 3 minutes left to go in the half. My wife is like, I'm going to be sick. I know I'm going to be sick. I think I have the flu. You have to come home. So call my mom, who was not at the game. My mom drove to Patriot Place, picked me up at the Renaissance Hotel. I left at halftime. She picked me up and drove me home. Shut my phone off, shut the TV off, everything. I just shut everything off, and I was like, I'll watch it later. And I ended up watching the game at home on tape delay, flipping out, of course, with the, it was incredible. One of the most unbelievable games. And like, I've had season tickets for the Patriots since 2000. I've been in almost every single home game since the year 2000. So I've been incredibly lucky. That one game, the energy, people say it's the best game they've ever been to, ever. And I'm like, I missed the second half of that game. Like, God damn it. It wasn't a Mark Wahlberg situation where I just left because I thought they sucked. It was like I had to get home, take care of the kids. But the funny thing is that the mantra for that year was do your job, right? I was like, this is it. This is my job. I'm a dad. I have to go home and take care of the family. Like, family takes precedence over football. But my goodness, it's tough living with that one. It's tough living knowing
that's a tough one. That's a tough one to miss. I have fond memories about that game, watching that one with my dad, because I remember watching the Ravens win the week before that and being terrified of playing them because at that point they had just beaten us in 2012 and given us a scare in 2011, and they had beaten us in the 2012 regular season as well. And it was just like, I want no part of these guys. And obviously 09 as well, when they come in and stomp you in the left. Like, this is the one team you do not want. And it was like, this is the best Patriots team we've seen in a while. This is the one team you don't want. And obviously the game is just insane back and forth. You get the two 14-point comebacks, just like Brady in the Orange Bowl in his last game in college. Same type of thing. But I remember all season long, my dad and I kept talking about, hey, when are they going to break out the double pass to Edelman? We're like, we'd never seen it. We're like, we knew Edelman was a college quarterback. We knew that had to be somewhere in their playbook, and they got to dial it up at some point. And any football fan knows when you're watching a play and they throw the screen pass and you realize two things at the same time. One, that screen pass went backwards. And two, something looks off about this. And when you feel those two at the same time, they're setting up for a double pass. That's what my dad and I realized at the same time, that's backwards pass to Edelman. And this looks weird and something's going on. And the second that happened, we were just already out of our seats celebrating. The ball hadn't even been thrown yet, and we're ready for it. I love it. Finally see it on that touchdown pass, which was
what a season. You talk about that game, and then to end it on Super Bowl 49, having an unbelievable game with the Seahawks and ending it with the Malcolm Butler interception. I mean, like, I don't think there's been a better playoffs ever for the Patriots. I mean, they absolutely annihilated the Colts. Of course, that was the stupid Spygate game, but like, they annihilated the Colts in the AFC Championship game, and then played that one of the best Super Bowls ever played against the Seahawks. I mean, it was incredible.
It's just exhilarating run. You get the two fantastic games with the one blowout in the middle, which is fun. Like, that's a nice way to do it. And after, it's funny because growing up, the three original Super Bowls were like for my dad, but like, I don't really remember that. I remember the DVDs and I know all the mythology, but I don't really remember the actual games themselves. And to me, it was like, I haven't seen Brady win one like in my memory, like since he got established as a legend. And it felt like every time they got close, something happened. It wasn't supposed to happen. And that Ravens game felt like there's going to be another one where something's going to go wrong that shouldn't be happening. And it happened, and they still won the game. They pulled out everything they had. So fantastic football game.
All right, what do you got? You got one?
I got a fairly recent one here too.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I'm pulling from my Page a Day calendar again. Shout out to that. On this day in 2020, staying recent, Clemson upsets North Carolina. This is men's college basketball with a 79-76 win in overtime at North Carolina. It ended a 59-game winning streak by North Carolina against Clemson at home. That's a streak that began in 1926.
Oh my God, dude.
Clemson was down by 10 points with 2 minutes left, tied the game up at the buzzer. They never led in regulation, and then they never trailed in overtime to get the win.
That's wild. I mean, dude, 1920 something. That's outrageous. That is outrageous.
59 straight home games. That's all. I mean, that's college basketball for you.
That's horrifying. They broke the curse. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about college sports, I got two things I'll mention. One, the hat I'm wearing. Go Blue. Michigan,
Blue.
the huge win earlier this week in a very, very fun national championship game. The other one, I feel like I'm kind of in a somewhat unique position here as a Providence College basketball fan to provide some advice to Patriots fans here, in that the Friars had, who we thought was our head coach for life on our college basketball team last season. And he left after last year. And it's a whole new era that we're in. And it's obviously not the same as the Bill Belichick situation, but kind of the recalibration for a season and the new things that come with it and the new joys because it's a new coach and a new style, and also the new frustrations because there's things that this coach isn't as good at as the other ones. And I think that's something Patriots fans should expect next year, regardless of exactly who the coach is and how good they are. There are going to be things that next year's team does better than what this past year's Patriots team did. Right. And that's going to feel great while it's happening. And there's also definitely going to be trade-offs because Bill Belichick is really good at what he does. And even if they hire a guy who ends up being here for the next 30 years as the head coach, he's not going to be as good as Bill Belichick right out of the box. There's going to be head-scratching decisions, even if he ends up being that guy. And it's going to be an emotional roller coaster, and it's going to be a very different experience. And it's an exciting one, but, it's a new world. And it's an enjoyable experience to kind of get to learn. You get to learn to love something that you love in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of question marks going into the offseason, but that makes it fun. And honestly, it's going to keep us busy. I'll tell you that much. So, we're
going to have a lot of listeners this year. It's going to be fun.
Yep. So, anyways, all right, that does it. Thanks again, people, for tuning in. We really appreciate it. The chat was going crazy. We love you guys. Thank you for making it more interesting. You guys always enhance the show, and so we appreciate you guys coming through. As always, we see kind of those familiar faces, and then we have some new faces pop in every now and again too, which is cool. So, so thanks again for that. As Matt said, I think we'll be back Monday night. I think that makes some sense, especially with the long weekend. It's kind of like a Sunday night. And so we'll probably do
halftime of the Monday night game.
That's what I'm thinking. Halftime of the Monday night game, just like we do halftime on Sunday night, and we'll go from there. And then, maybe once the off season comes, we may not do 2 shows a week. Maybe we'll only do 1, but we might still do 2 shows depending on what the draft outlook looks like and things like that. So we'll see. But anyways, that's the way it goes. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate it, and we're gonna miss Bill Belichick like crazy, but. Now we have a second team to root for. Now we have Bill Belichick's team to root for. So
it's bittersweet, and I'm glad that they let him go out on his own terms. I will say I like that about Kraft for Brady and Bill. They weren't trying to let them go out on their own terms. And what they say, if you love something, let it go. I feel like that's what's going on with these two crates.
When you're right, like I thought, we talked about them getting compensation back, but Kraft said, let him go away, let him do his thing. And don't worry about the compensation, right? And let him kind of get his own job and not have to worry about dealing with us and everything. And so I think that really kind of shows what Kraft is all about and how much Kraft respected Bill in that instance. And so, that's what we got. So anyways, so thanks guys. We appreciate it. And we will talk to you. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.